Welcome back to my course on learning Photoshop for beginners. If you've missed any episodes and need to catch up, I'll put a link in the description below so you can go back and check out those episodes. Today we're on episode 5, Fancy Selecting. Hi, I'm Terry Vanderhooden, professional photographer, and I use Photoshop just about every day. If you've stuck with me this long, through all these classes, learning some of the more important but tedious basics of Photoshop, today we're going to branch out and do something fun. We're going to explore fancy selecting, where Photoshop does most of the work for you. So let's go. So we're inside Photoshop here, and I just pulled up an image here of this guy. Down here on the side where we just were last episodes, we were looking at these different ways to do selecting, right? These created those marching ants, the lasso tool, whatnot. So the next section down is a little bit more creative, and let's take a look at these. These are where Photoshop actually does a lot of assisting in your selection. So let's go with the magic wand to begin with. Now the magic wand will select areas. So let's take a look at this at the top. We have our sample size, which normally is going to default to point sample with a tolerance of 32. That's how it typically is going to default. So what happens is if you click on something, let's say for instance we're going to click on his shirt, it's going to select everything with those gray tones. Every tone that I clicked on is going to be grabbed in this image. You can see it's all the way around over here, all these marching ants over here. So let's hit Command D to get rid of that selection and try this again. Let's go down and do 3x3 average, and we'll click that same area. And you can see now we've got even a wider grab, right? We've got most of the sky, the couple spots we didn't, up around his hair. So let's do that one more time. Command D to delete the selection. Now let's change the tolerance. So depending on our tolerance, so if we want to bring this up to say in the 70s somewhere and try that same selection where we click on his shirt, we get even more things selected. If we take our tolerance down and put it at a real small number like 13 or something, let's try this again, and we take a selection, we'll select less area. So the tolerance says how much area do you want to select? How much freedom do you want to give Photoshop here to choose what you want? So the magic wand tool is useful in some situations, but it's not typically super useful because it does just such a wide area of selecting. So let's go ahead and we're going to delete this and take this down and bring in another image. While the magic wand tool isn't always a useful tool, there is one way that I find it really useful, and here's how it works. Let's say you've shot a product onto a white background. So let's do this just to do a quick little test. We'll go up here and we'll create a new file. And in this case, we did it 8 by 10 inches at 300 DPI. We're going to go ahead and grab the move tool. I know that shortcut is the letter V, and we're just going to slide this over, use our move tool, hold the shift key down, and slide it over onto this white background. It's going to give you a little bit of a warning that maybe the color spaces aren't going to match, but that's all right. We'll just click OK. And we can see that our white background really isn't all that white. It's basically a gray. And if we come in here and take a look at our white background, let's take our eyedropper tool, come down to the color sampler tool, and go ahead and click on this white. Our info palette comes up and shows us that the white here is 255, 255, 255. That way we know that is pure white. There's no detail in that white. If we click over here, we can see that in section 2, that it is 241, 238, 237. So it's not pure white. Obviously, we can tell from looking at it as well as just how it works, right? So let's go ahead and get rid of this for a second. Come back to our original here, and we'll just slide this over. So now, as we look at this, we can see that this image up here, if we click in this corner, this is not 255 all the way across. So we have to lighten this up. If we were to take and do Command L, which would bring up our levels, and we decided we were going to take our levels and brighten this up so that we could get this to 255, well, it brightens up everything way too much, right? It brightens up the lens too much. You start getting a little bit too many highlights on the lens. It doesn't show it properly. And so whatever detail you have here, you can start losing. So we can't do it that way. But what we can do is take our magic wand tool. So we come over to the magic wand. What we're going to do is click in the white area. And you can see what Photoshop did. Photoshop selected all this area that was all very similar, except for the around the shadow and the lens, of course. This area was left out. So the way we add to a selection with the magic wand is we just hold the shift key down just like in any other selection tool. And we can click in here, and now we've added this area under here. We've selected, you can see the marching ants are around the entire background. We've selected all the white. We do Command L again, and this time we brighten this up to 255. And we look at our numbers down over here as we're sliding the scale. Move this up till we get to 255, and now we click OK. Now what we've done is we have, let's go ahead and turn off our selection. We've put this on a completely white background, and we can prove it to you by opening up a new image again. Bring it over here and grab our Move tool, hold the Shift key down, drag it over into the center, click OK, and you can see that there is no side area that you're looking at. You're looking at just the background, and it blends pretty well. So here's a little tip in Photoshop that doesn't actually help you with selecting, but would help you with this project. And that is, if you right click in any of the background of your image. So here's the image, right? This is our background. This is the working space, the tabletop, if you would. We can right click on that, and we can come down, we can click and make any kind of color that we want, black, dark gray, medium gray, whatever it is we like. But they also have a thing here, select custom color. So let's click on that. And of course we can input whatever color we want, if we wanted it blue or whatever color we want. But we're going to come down here to the RGB, and we're going to type 255. And we'll do that on all three of these, 255, 255. That's going to be knowing that we're going to get absolute white. It's way up here in the corner here, absolute white. So now our background is absolute white, and even though it does put a little shadow, you can really get a better idea how that works. So if we were to take that image, and let's see, let's go ahead and undo, see if it'll undo the whole thing. You can see that it sets off there and doesn't blend very well. So with that background set the way we want it, we do have the ability to check this and see how this whole thing looks on a white background if you want to do that. And at any time, you can turn this back to your default or whatever tone is going to work best for you. All right, so back to this guy here. As we come over here to our quick selection tools, here's another quick selection tool. And what this does, this has a big dot. And what the dot does signifies the area that you want to select it. Let's just select the strap that he has over his shoulder. So we'll click on that, and you can see what happened here. It selected the strap, of course, but it also selected neighboring areas. And the reason is our brush was a little too big. So let's try that again, and we're going to make our brush a little smaller to fit inside of that strap. And as we click, look what it does. It selected the strap. And we want to add to it. You don't have to hold anything down because it defaults up here. Once you start a quick selection, it'll default to the plus selection. So there's a minus. You can do it obviously by using your Shift key or the Option Alt key, but it automatically goes to the plus, so it knows that you want to add to this. So let's go ahead and add to it. We click, and now what we've done is we have just selected just the strap here, and that's a pretty quick way of selecting without having to get in there with the lasso tool and finally draw it out. We can just select it that way, and that's a pretty quick way to go. So that's how the magic wand works, as well as the quick selection tool. So here's another image here, and what we've got here is an ancient city in Israel, and what we're going to do is we're going to take and use some tools to create, say, a different sky. So in Photoshop, you have the ability to replace skies, and it's kind of like selecting, but it's actually having Photoshop do that selection for you. And the way you get to it, you have your image. Let's go ahead and just duplicate this so we have two to work on. We go up to Edit, come down, and go to Sky Replacement. It's right about in the middle of that dialog box. Hit Sky Replacement, And here is where we actually pick the sky. So you can come in here and look at blue skies. These are usually defaulted from Photoshop. And you can create whatever sky it is you want to have in the background. So let's just use this one for now. And you have some parameters that you can deal with. You can shift the edge of this, of how far you want it to go, how fine of a selection it really is, fading the edge. You can do these types of things. You can change the temperature. Like this is obviously a very warm shot, so maybe you want to have a little bit warmer shot in the background. And you can scale it. So if you wanted to scale this up and make it larger so that rainbow is larger, you can do that, or you can make it smaller and come back to more of a natural look to it. So that's how you do sky replacement. So that's a pretty easy way to get in and do a sky replacement. And you can see the difference if we go back here. That's what we started with, and that's our new sky. So anytime that you want to do a new sky, come over here, go to Edit, Sky Replacement. Find a sky that you like. A lot of these are loaded in. And just click OK. And what we've done here, you can see what we did, a whole new sky. So that's two different ways that you can get sky replacement pretty simply in Photoshop. So here's another quick selection tool that Photoshop has, and it's the Object Selection tool. If you're enjoying these free classes on learning Photoshop, take a moment to hit that like button. Then hit the subscribe button, and remember to ring the little bell icon to be reminded of my next video. There's still lots more to come on this series, so you won't want to miss any episodes. Let's get back to it. So the next section in Photoshop here is the Quick Selection tool. So we're just going to click on this. Now up at the top we have a bunch of options. One of the things we're going to take an option of is the Object Finder. And this does a little thinking of what the different objects are. We can select a subject based on the cloud or on the device. The cloud's more detailed, so that's usually the way I go. I'd rather wait a couple of minutes and get it exactly right. So now what happens, when we move our cursor around, you can see that Photoshop is selecting different subjects. So this is a selection of just her, a selection of him, selection of the map. So depending on what we want to select, we have that ability. So Photoshop is going to do that work for us. So let's click on him first, and we see that we've got a selection going around him. And let's go ahead and hold the Shift key down and select her as well. And then let's go ahead and select the map. So you can see that we'll turn this off up here so we can see just our selection. We'll move this out of the way for a second. Everything is selected just about. We can still see some marching ants inside of our selection, so we want to get rid of those. So we take our lasso tool, which is right up here. We grab our lasso tool, and then we hold the Shift key down, and then we just draw broad circles around the things inside of our selection to add them to the selection. So we've added that. We need to add, looks like there's a few lines right there we need to add. And we see some blinking down here, so we're going to add that. And so now we have a good selection where they're all on the inside of the marching ants, and now we're good to go. The couple is selected as well as the map is selected out. So one of the things you can do in Photoshop is hit this generative fill. So if you hit that, what it's going to do is it's going to say, you know, it can tell you, you can put in crazy things here that'll draw from stock. We'll get into that another time. But we're just saying, just fill that area as best as you can. So we'll hit generate, and it's going to go through and think about it and give us we've told it, ask it to remove this couple and then replace what's behind the couple with something that obviously makes sense. So let's see what Photoshop comes up with. And that's pretty good. We have different versions we can go with, but that first version is actually pretty good. We'll just leave it right there. Actually, I like this one a little bit better. So this took them out, added a new fence in the background, and you can see what it did over here in masking, and we'll get into that another date. But this is a pretty simple way to go. So this tool right here is called let's see, if we go up to Windows, it's called the contextual taskbar. You can turn it off or turn it on. So whenever you make a selection and this is on, that's going to come up and say, hey, there's something that you want to do to this. So this is a way that that can work in terms of being able to remove something. So let's go ahead and try another image. All right, so we have a new image up here, and we're going to go back to our selection tool that's object selection. Make sure our objects finder is on, and you'll see that each one of these people are selected. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Let's go ahead and make a copy here so we have that. Let's say we want to remove this guy right here. So let's click on him, and we're just going to, let's go ahead and just use the content aware fill. So that's basically all the information around him, and you can see what it did. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And it selected, it did a decent job, but not great. It didn't select all this. So let's come back here. Let's undo that. And we're just going to turn this off so we can go in and take a finer look at the selection. And we see it didn't take in the hat. So let's go ahead and grab the lasso tool, and we're going to add that. Hold the shift key down and add this to our selection. So now we've got all of him selected, but look at this. If we look at this close, you're going to see something here. And that is, let's go ahead and get rid of that for right now. That keeps getting in our way. Turn it off. You can see that our selection selected around, let's zoom up. So it did a pretty good job selecting, but it didn't select the blur around him. So one of the cool things in Photoshop is you have the ability to alter. I did it around here on the thumb as well. You have the ability to alter your selection. Now let's go up into the selection. It's got a whole little menu for selecting. Look at this. So we can go to modify, and let's go to modify, and we're going to expand that selection. So let's move it up by, say, 3 pixels, and we'll hit OK. And you can see that now we've got a little bit of a wider version of that. Let's undo that. So this is with and this is with expand. So we're going to expand it by 3 pixels. You can see that, but it's still not quite enough. So let's go ahead and do that one more time, and we'll modify it and expand for another 3 pixels. See if that does a little better. Okay, so now you see what it did. It selected clearly around the hand. Let's see how it did on the foot. It did pretty good, not quite yet. So if we want to just add to there, we can hit our lasso tool, hit the shift key to add to a selection, and just make sure we get all of that in. Now as we go back, we can see that he's all selected. So now let's go ahead and ask Photoshop to fill with the content aware. So taking pixels from around the other areas. And let's take a look and see, and hide our pixels. And you can see it did a pretty good job. It left her with a little stump hand, but other than that, it did a pretty good job of getting rid of that person. So when you make a selection, you always have the ability to augment the selection, add to it, change some things. Using the quick select is a quick way for you to get into something and learn how to select something fairly quickly. And you can always add to it by using the lasso tool or expanding the selection to gather everything that you want before you make your changes in your image. So it's a pretty good way to go using these types of selection tools. I'm going to show you one more, and we'll be done for today. So here's an image of a truck shot out in a parking lot. Not the best looking parking lot, but let's see if we can make a few changes to make this look a little bit better of things that we've already learned today. So we go in, we take this picture, and we go, first thing we're going to do is go into edit and do sky replacement. Let's get a better sky for this background. Let's go with a nice cloudy sky. Let's see, we got to find something here a little bit better. How about this one? That one looks better. Let's go with this one. Click OK. Now we've added a new sky. Now, one of the things that you find out when you've added a new sky is you kind of have to think about reflections and how that all works, right? So if we look in the window reflections here, you can see that those are not really doesn't really represent that kind of sky that's happening right now. So we have to change that as well. Let's go over here, grab our lasso tool that we already know how to use, and we can start selecting out this window. I already did this, so I'm going to load that selection of the windows. So there's the selection. You can see the marching ants around it. Now we have the ability to make a few changes. So let's go in here. Quite simply, we'll go up into this sky picture right here, and we'll take our marquee selection tool, and we're just going to grab a big swath of that sky, trying to avoid the trees. And we're going to copy it. And we come down here to our image that we already have selected. We go up here, we learned this the other day, edit, paste special, paste into, and we're going to paste that reflection of the clouds into the windows. Now, while that's a really nice look, it's still a little extreme. So what we're going to do is we're going to just reduce that. So we come up here to our opacity of this layer, and we'll get into layers soon. We're just going to reduce the opacity of that layer so it looks a little more realistic. And now you have an image that through some quick selecting, you went from something that was pretty boring to something a lot more exciting. So that's simple things in Photoshop where Photoshop's doing the work for you. Next time we're going to get into the last selecting tool that Photoshop offers. It's really, really cool. So we'll get into it next time, and that's the pen tool. Now, if you have any questions about some of the topics I've covered, feel free to leave questions or comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Remember, you can always reach me via email at terry@imagelight.com if you'd rather contact me that way. See you next time.